To begin with, we will hear in a moment from Dr. Paul Kirschen, who has looked at the cost of coastal flooding and climate change. The baseline cost numbers for a single event in that study, $6 billion, serves as a rough estimate of the cost of serious storm hitting the Boston metropolitan area. Dr. Kirshen's work shows coastal flooding because of climate change could cost the Boston metropolitan area approximately $94 billion, with the multiple events occurring over the course of this century. Superstorm Sandy has put into stark relief that we are particularly vulnerable here in Massachusetts and New England to the effects of climate change. Our summers are getting hotter. By the end of the century, climate change could make summer in Massachusetts feel like summer in North Carolina, raising the average temperature from 73 degrees to 86 degrees by the end of this century. Our winters are warming, turning the poetry of Robert Frost into oral history of winters past. According to scientists at the University of New Hampshire, New England winters have become 4 degrees Fahrenheit warmer on average since 1965. Say that again. Our winters in New England have become 4 degrees warmer Fahrenheit since 1965. We now have Philadelphia's weather from 1965, but without their sports teams. Our seas are heating up. The average sea surface temperature in the Northeast for the first half of 2012 was the highest since record-keeping began in 1854. It was 51 degrees Fahrenheit in 2012, more than 3 degrees higher than the average for the last 3 decades. This isn't just about putting the polar bear swim in Southie at risk. This is about weather that feels like the Deep South, changing the very face of our state before our eyes. These warmer, rising seas are eating away at our coastline. Massachusetts loses an average of 2.8 million square feet to rising sea levels each year, especially in places like Cape Cod. And even though Cape Cod may not disappear tomorrow, it's getting increasingly hard to find actual cod, the sacred symbol of Massachusetts. Cod love cold water, and the waters off of our shores are just not as cold. By late this century, Georges Bank is projected to be too warm to attract cod. Meanwhile, lobsters are flourishing, which sounds like a delicious problem except for the lobstermen who are losing their shirts from depressed lobster prices. But we don't need projections to tell us what could happen. Because if Sandy had hit Boston at high tide, another 5 feet of water would have surged into Boston and along our coastline. And sea level rise from climate change could add another 2.5 feet by the latter part of this century. So how would Boston's landmarks fare if Sandy hit at high tide today? In 50 years or so, well, additional Section 1, Sandy feet of sea at high tide. 0 to 2 feet higher, Sandy in the future, 2 to 4 feet higher. Picture 2, Fanueil Hall. Sandy at high tide, 2 feet higher, Sandy in the future, 2 to 4 feet higher. Picture 3, at Logan Airport. Sandy in the future will be up to 4 feet higher. Picture 4, Boston Garden. Sandy in the future will be 2 to 4 feet higher in terms of the water. In the Boston Common, the public garden, Sandy in the future will be 2 to 4 feet higher. And picture 6, neighborhoods of the Back Bay, Sandy in the future. The tides would be 2 to 4 feet higher. But instead of taking these threats seriously, The debate in Washington amongst the Republicans turned climate change into a punchline at their national convention and clean energy into a punching bag in the Congress and on the campaign trail. While Americans are worried about Mother Nature's wrath, too many Republican leaders appear more worried about the wrath of the Koch brothers and other big oil giants. Was a battle, a referendum between Mother Nature and the Koch-brothers. And the American public voted for Mother Nature. Because they could see what is happening to this planet. We know that burning more oil, coal, and fossil fuels is what causes global warming, yet Republican leaders in Washington want to preserve $4 billion in annual tax breaks for the most profitable oil companies in the world. They want to raise taxes on wind energy production, even though it emits zero carbon